If you saw my family at a funeral, you'd think they were auditioning for a daytime soap opera. The dramatic sighs, the designer black veils, the way they'd dab at dry eyes with silk handkerchiefs, it was all a performance. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Eleanor, though most people call me Edie. I'm 29, a third-grade teacher, and according to my relatives, the failure of the family because I don't have a six-figure salary or a corner office. My family? They're straight-up obsessed with the grind. My Uncle Rick is always talking about his portfolio, and my cousin Brenda won't let 5 minutes pass without mentioning her luxury lifestyle brand. To them, if it doesn't make money, it doesn't make sense. They're the type of people who know the price of everything but the value of nothing. They spent every holiday complaining about the food, the decor, or why Nana wasn't liquidating her assets to help them with their next failed business venture. But then there was Nana. Evelyn was the only person in that bloodline who actually had a soul. She was a retired librarian who lived in a cozy, slightly cluttered house that smelled like cinnamon and old books. While the rest of the family treated her like a ticking clock, just waiting for her to kick the bucket so they could fight over her furniture, I actually liked being there. Nana was my peace. I'd head over to her place at least 3 times a week after school. I wasn't there for a handout. Honestly, I was usually the one bringing her groceries or helping her figure out why her iPad was acting glitchy again. We'd sit on her porch, sipping tea, and she'd tell me stories about the old days. But lately, something felt off. Nana was losing weight, and there was this tiredness in her eyes that she couldn't quite hide, even with her sharp wit. "Edie, honey," she said to me one Tuesday evening, "the vultures are circling." I knew exactly who she meant. Uncle Rick had been calling her twice a day, checking in, which was code for asking when she was going to sell her house. "Don't let them get to you, Nana," I told her, squeezing her hand. "They're just salty because you don't play their games. They're living rent-free in their own delusions of grandeur." She chuckled, but it turned into a soft cough. "They think I'm just a little old lady with a pension and a modest house. They think they've got me all figured out." She gave me a look that I didn't understand then, but I certainly do now. It was the look of someone who held all the cards and was just waiting for the right moment to lay them on the table. Christmas Eve was approaching, and Nana had insisted on a full family gathering. This was weird because usually, she preferred the quiet. But she told everyone she had an early gift to hand out. You should have seen the group chat. My phone was blowing up with Brenda and Rick speculating on what it could be. "Probably just more of those dusty old stamps," Brenda texted. "Or she's finally signing over the deed to the lake house," Rick added. They weren't coming for the ham or the carols. They were coming for the loot. They were ready to play nice for a few hours if it meant a payday. Little did they know, Nana was about to put them through the ultimate test. She was keeping a secret, a terminal one, and she wanted to see who actually cared about her and who was just there for the bag. Me? I was just worried about her cough. I had no idea that by the time the sun went down on Christmas Eve, my entire life, and the lives of my greedy relatives, would be changed forever. The vibe at Nana's house on Christmas Eve was, well, it was awkward. You could practically smell the desperation in the air, and it was stronger than the scent of the pine needles on the tree. My Uncle Rick rolled up in a leased Mercedes he definitely couldn't afford, acting like he owned the sidewalk. Brenda was right behind him, dressed in an outfit that probably cost 3 months of my mortgage, tapping away on her phone and complaining about the low-speed Wi-Fi in Nana's neighborhood. They weren't there for the holiday spirit. They were there for the early gift Nana had promised. Nana looked frail, sitting in her favorite wingback chair. She had this calm about her, though, the kind of calm you see in a chess master right before they pull off a checkmate. I was hovering near the kitchen, making sure the cocoa was hot and keeping an eye on her. I could tell she was tired, but she insisted on doing this. "All right, everyone," Nana said, her voice quiet but steady enough to cut through Brenda's loud complaining about her brand's engagement numbers. "I know you're all busy people. So, I won't keep you long." Uncle Rick leaned forward, his eyes literally gleaming. "No rush, Mom. We're just here because we love you. But, you did mention something about a gift? Nana reached for a stack of envelopes on the small side table next to her. One by one, she handed them out. Rick, Brenda, my Aunt Sarah, and then me. I wanted to give you these now, Nana said. While I can still see your faces. Rick ripped his open before she even finished the sentence. He pulled out a check, stared at it for a second, and then his face went from excitement to pure, unadulterated saltiness. $5 million? Rick scoffed, holding the paper up like it was a used napkin. Mom, what is this? A joke? Brenda looked at hers and actually laughed. Nana, seriously? You think we're 5 years old? This is clearly fake. The ink looks like it came from a home printer. You're really out here handing out Monopoly money on Christmas Eve? That's kind of a sus move, even for you. The room turned into a chorus of mockery. They were clowning her. Aunt Sarah was shaking her head, saying Nana had finally lost her marbles. Rick even had the audacity to crumple his check into a ball and toss it toward the trash can. I drove 2 hours for a prank? I have actual deals to close, Mom. This is a waste of my time. I looked down at my own check. It looked real to me, but honestly, I didn't care about the number. I looked at Nana. Her face didn't change. She just watched them show their true colors. Hey everyone, before we get to the moment where the family realizes they just made the biggest mistake of their lives, do me a huge favor. If you're enjoying this story of family drama and instant karma, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who loves a good vultures get nothing story. It really helps the channel out. Now, let's get back to the fallout. I'm sorry you feel that way, Nana said softly. Feel that way? Brenda snapped. Nana, you're literally handing out fake checks while we're out here struggling in a real economy. It's disrespectful. Honestly, I'm done. I have a party to get to where the people actually have main character energy and don't play mind games. One by one, they left. They didn't even stay for the dinner I'd spent all morning prepping. They didn't give Nana a hug. They didn't even say, Merry Christmas. They just grabbed their designer coats and stormed out, leaving their worthless checks scattered on the floor or in the trash. I was the only one left. I walked over to Nana and sat on the ottoman at her feet. I'm so sorry, Nana. They don't get it. And you, Edie? Nana asked, her hand shaking slightly as she touched my hair. Are you going to throw yours away too? Are you going to tell me I'm delusional? No, I said, tucking the envelope into my bag. I'm going to keep it. Not because of the money, but because you gave it to me. Thank you, Nana. For everything. She smiled then, a real, tired smile. You're a good girl, Edie. You always were. You're the only one who didn't come here with a price tag on your heart. That night, after I tucked her in and made sure her oxygen was set right, I went home and cried. I didn't cry because of the fake money. I cried because I knew, deep down, that Nana was saying goodbye. I had no idea that the piece of paper in my bag was about to turn the world upside down. Christmas morning didn't feel like Christmas. Usually, I'd wake up to a flurry of passive-aggressive texts from Brenda complaining about her gifts, or Rick bragging about some exclusive club he'd talked his way into. But this morning? Total radio silence. I guess after the fake check incident, they decided I wasn't even worth the data plan to text. I sat in my kitchen, staring at that envelope. Part of me, the logical, schoolteacher part, thought, there's no way. Nana was a librarian. She lived in a house with creaky floorboards and a toaster from the 90s. Where would she get $5 million for one person, let alone for the whole family? But there was another part of me, the part that saw that chess master look in her eyes, that just had a feeling. Nana wasn't the type to pull a prank that cruel. She was many things, but she wasn't a troll. I decided to head to the ATM, just to see. The bank branch was closed for the holiday, obviously, but the high-end ATM in the lobby was open 24/7. I felt like a total clown even walking up to it. I looked over my shoulder, half expecting Rick to jump out from behind a pillar and film me for his lifestyle vlog, mocking me for actually believing in the check. I slid the check into the machine. My heart was doing drum solos in my chest. "Please don't get eaten by the machine, please don't get eaten by the machine," I whispered. The screen flickered. Processing. Then, a message popped up: "This deposit exceeds the ATM limit. Please see a teller during business hours or use our mobile app for verification." Wait. It didn't say, invalid. It didn't say, fake. It said, exceeds limit. I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking so hard I almost dropped it. I opened the bank's mobile app and used the remote deposit feature. I snapped a photo of the front. Snapped a photo of the back. Hit submit. I waited. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. The screen refreshed. My available balance hadn't changed yet, but under pending transactions, there it was. $5 million. I actually had to lean against the cold glass of the bank's front door to keep from falling over. It wasn't Monopoly money. It wasn't a prank. It was $5 million. Real, spendable, life-changing paper. Nana wasn't just a retired librarian. She was a low-key multimillionaire who had been moving in silence for decades. And the rest of the family? They had literally crumpled up $5 million and tossed it into the trash next to a half-eaten plate of ham. I sat in my car for a long time, just breathing. My mind was racing. If Nana gave us all $5 million, that meant she had at least $25 million liquid. How? Why the secrecy? And then it hit me, the test. She didn't tell them it was real because she wanted to see what they'd do when they thought she had nothing left but a delusion. She wanted to see if they'd respect the gesture, or if they'd only respect the bag. And man, did they fail. They didn't just fail, they down bad failed. If you're sitting there thinking, would have kept that check just in case, smash that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the moment when the rest of the family finds out they literally threw away a fortune. Share this video with your friends. Let's see who the real ones are in your circle. I drove straight to Nana's. I didn't care about the money, I needed to talk to her. I needed to know why. But when I pulled into her driveway, I saw something that made my stomach drop. Uncle Rick's Mercedes was back. And so was Brenda's SUV. They weren't there to apologize. They were there because they'd talked themselves into a new theory. As I walked up the porch steps, I could hear Rick shouting from inside. "It's elder abuse, Sarah. She's clearly glitched. Handing out $5 million checks? We need to get her declared incompetent today. If she's lost her mind, we need to take over her accounts before she yeets the rest of the estate into some charity for stray cats." My blood turned to ice. They weren't just greedy, they were straight-up villains. They weren't satisfied with mocking her, now they wanted to strip her of her rights because she'd offended them with a gift they thought was fake. I pushed open the front door. "Get out," I said, my voice shaking with a rage I didn't know I had. Brenda turned around, rolling her eyes. "Oh, look, it's the golden child. Did you come back to collect more play money, Edie? We're busy handling adult business. Move aside." I said get out, I repeated, stepping into the living room. The check wasn't fake, Rick. I just deposited mine. It's pending. $5 million. The silence that hit the room was so heavy you could have heard a pin drop on a carpet. Rick's jaw didn't just drop, it practically hit the floor. Brenda looked like she'd just seen a ghost. You're capping," Rick stammered. "There's no way. She's a librarian." "Check your trash can, Rick," I said, pointing to the kitchen. "Maybe you can still find yours. But if I were you, I'd start praying." Because Nana is awake, and she heard every word you just said about elder abuse. You could practically hear the gears grinding in Uncle Rick's head. It was like watching a computer try to run a high-def game on a dial-up connection. He looked at me, then at the trash can, then back at Nana, who was watching the whole scene with a look of pure, icy disappointment. 5 million? Rick whispered. His voice was suddenly 3 octaves higher. Edie, you've gotta be trolling us. There is no way that check cleared. It's pending, Rick, I said, crossing my arms. And unless the bank is in on some massive conspiracy, Nana just tried to hand you a life-changing W, and you literally threw it in the garbage because it wasn't aesthetic enough for you. Brenda was already on her hands and knees by the kitchen trash can, frantically digging through coffee grounds and discarded wrapping paper. I found it. I found it, she shrieked, pulling out a crumpled, damp piece of paper. It's okay. I can iron it out. Nana, sweetie, I was just joking earlier. You know I have that dark humor. I totally knew it was real. I was just testing the security of the envelope. It was cringe in its purest form. The main character energy Brenda had been bragging about earlier had completely evaporated, replaced by the desperate scrounging of someone who realized they'd just fumbled the bag of a lifetime. Nana finally spoke. Her voice was low, but it commanded the room. Sit down. All of you. Rick and Sarah scurried to the sofa like obedient puppies. Brenda stood by the trash can, clutching her coffee-stained check like it was the Holy Grail. I've spent 40 years listening to you all talk about the grind, the hustle, and the portfolio, Nana began. I watched you treat people like rungs on a ladder. I watched you treat me like a bank that was taking too long to process a withdrawal. Mom, that's not fair, Sarah started, but Nana held up a hand. I worked as a librarian, yes. But I also started investing in real estate and index funds back when apps didn't exist. I lived simply. I didn't need a leased Mercedes to feel like a person, Rick. And because I didn't flex for the gram, Brenda, you all assumed I was broke and clueless. She looked at the crumpled checks in their hands. That 5 million was a gift. A final gesture. But more than that, it was a filter. I wanted to see who would say thank you to a little old lady for a piece of paper, and who would spit on it because they thought it had no value. Wait a minute, guys. Can we just talk about the audacity of Brenda digging through the trash? If you think the family got exactly what they deserved in this moment, drop a Team Edie in the comments right now. And seriously, hit that subscribe button. We are just getting started with the revelations. You do not want to miss what happens when the will is read. Share this with your friends and ask them, would they have kept the fake check? Now, Nana continued, her eyes locking onto Rick. I heard what you said about elder abuse. I heard you say I'd glitched. You wanted to take away my rights because you thought I was crazy for being generous. Rick started sweating. I mean, actual visible droplets. Mom, I was worried. You have to admit, handing out $5 million is a huge move. I thought maybe you were being scammed. The only people trying to scam me, Nana said, are currently sitting in my living room. She turned to me, and her expression softened instantly. Edie, you didn't even look at the amount until I told you to. You brought me groceries when I didn't ask. You sat with me when I was lonely. You didn't see a portfolio. You saw a person. She stood up, slowly, painfully, but with so much dignity it made my heart ache. The checks you have, if you can get the bank to accept them in that condition, keep them. Consider it your severance package from this family. Because from this moment on, I am ghosting the lot of you. Nana, you can't be serious. Brenda wailed. We're family. This is just a misunderstanding. We love you. You love the clout you thought you'd get from an inheritance, Nana replied. But there's something you should know. That 5 million? That's pocket change compared to what's left. And none of you, not one, is getting another cent. The room went cold. Rick looked like he was about to have a literal meltdown. He realized that by insulting the small gift, he had just disqualified himself from the main event. Get out, Nana said. Edie, stay. I have something else to show you. As the vultures slunk out of the house, clutching their stained and wrinkled checks, I felt a mix of relief and terror. I looked at Nana. What else is there? She reached into her book bag and pulled out a worn, leather-bound ledger. This, she said, is where the real story begins. And Edie? It's a lot more than 40 million. The front door clicked shut, and for the first time in hours, the house was silent. Well, as silent as an old house can be with the wind howling outside and the ghost of Uncle Rick's ego still lingering in the hallway. Nana looked exhausted. She slumped back into her chair, the leather-bound ledger resting on her lap like a heavy secret. Nana, you need to rest, I said, kneeling beside her. That was a lot. You just bodied the entire family in one go. She chuckled, a dry, raspy sound. They made it easy, Edie. They were so busy looking for a payday that they didn't realize they were already standing in the middle of a gold mine. But we don't have much time, and there's so much you don't know. She opened the ledger. I expected to see rows of stock tickers or bank account numbers, the kind of stuff Rick would simp for. Instead, the first few pages were filled with names. Names of people I didn't recognize, followed by dates and amounts. What is this? I asked, scanning the entries. This is my real portfolio, Nana said. Rick thinks wealth is about what you keep. I always believed wealth is about what you can give without anyone knowing it was you. Low-key impact, Edie. That's the goal. I pointed to a name, St. Jude's Elementary, new library wing. Then another, Oakwood Community Center, roof repair. And then, I saw it. My heart skipped a beat. Linwood Primary, Scholarship Fund for Underprivileged Students. Nana, that's my school, I whispered. I've been teaching there for 6 years. We always wondered who the anonymous guardian was. Every time a kid couldn't afford a field trip or the cafeteria ran out of lunch credits, the bill just disappeared. You? It was you? She winked at me. A librarian has to look out for her own, right? I didn't want the clout, Edie. I didn't want my name on a building or a plaque. I just wanted those kids to have a fair shot without some gatekeeper telling them they weren't worth the investment. As she flipped through the pages, the numbers started to add up. It wasn't just thousands, it was millions. For decades, while the rest of the family was out there flexing their latest side hustles and failing at crypto, Nana had been quietly funding half the charities in the county. I've been moving in silence since your grandfather passed, she explained. He was an engineer who patented a specific type of valve used in oil rigs. He was brilliant, but he hated the spotlight. When he died, he left me a solid foundation. I just grew it. I invested in things that mattered. Clean water, education, tech that actually helps people instead of just distracting them. She turned to the very back of the book. There was a summary page. My eyes widened as I read the final balance of her primary trust. It wasn't just the 40 million the family would eventually find out about. Between the real estate holdings, the offshore bonds, and the diversified portfolios, it was closer to $60 million. Wait, stop the clock. $60 million. Can we just take a second to imagine the look on Brenda's face if she knew she just traded $60 million for a coffee-stained check she found in the trash? If you're loving this quiet wealth reveal, make sure you're subscribed. Drop a comment below with what you would do if you found out your grandma was a secret mogul. Would you keep it a secret, or would you start flexing? Let me know, and don't forget to share this video. The karma is about to get even realer. Edie, Nana said, her voice turning serious. I'm leaving the entire estate to you. Not just the money, but the responsibility. The quiet generosity fund needs a new manager. Someone with a heart, not just a calculator. Nana, I can't, I stammered. I'm a teacher. I don't know how to manage $60 million. I'm mid at math on a good day. You don't need to be a math whiz, she said, squeezing my hand. I have lawyers and advisors who are paid very well to handle the boring stuff. What they don't have is vision. What they don't have is the ability to see a kid in the third row of your classroom and know that $100 for a new pair of shoes will change their entire life. She looked me dead in the eye. The family is going to come for you, Edie. When I'm gone, and the will is read, they are going to turn into total demons. They'll call you a manipulator. They'll say you brainwashed me. They might even try to sue. Are you ready for that? I looked at the ledger, then back at the woman who had been my entire world. I thought about Rick's greed and Brenda's fake luxury. Then I thought about the kids at my school who finally had books because of this little old lady. I'm ready, I said, my voice finally finding its strength. If they want to catch these legal hands, let them. I'm not letting them touch a cent of what you've built. Nana smiled, a genuine, peaceful smile. That's my girl. Now, let's have some of that cocoa. I think I've earned a cheat day, don't you? We sat together for the rest of the evening, just talking. No talk of money, no talk of the vultures. Just stories. It was the last, normal, night I'd ever have. Because 48 hours later, Nana went to sleep and didn't wake up. And that's when the real war began. The funeral was exactly what I expected. A top-tier performance of fake grief. Uncle Rick showed up in a custom black suit, looking more like he was attending a red carpet event than saying goodbye to his mother. Brenda was doing the most, wearing oversized sunglasses and sobbing loudly enough for the back rows to hear, while simultaneously checking her phone to see if her "Rest in Peace, Queen" post was trending. It was cringe at its absolute peak. They all ignored me. To them, I was just the broke teacher who had luckily snagged $5 million. They still had no idea about the true scale of Nana's wealth. In their minds, they were about to split the real inheritance, the house, the savings, and whatever else was left. They were already counting their chickens before the eggs had even been laid. After the service, we gathered in a cold, sterile conference room at the lawyer's office. Mr. Henderson, Nana's attorney, looked like he had stepped out of a 1950s detective movie, sharp suit, no-nonsense eyes, and a thick file that held the fate of everyone in the room. Rick sat at the head of the table, acting like the CEO of the family. All right, Henderson, let's wrap this up. We've had a long day, and I've got some high-level investments that need my attention. Just give us the breakdown of the estate distribution. Mr. Henderson didn't even look up from his papers. Very well. As per the instructions of Evelyn Vance, I will read the final will and testament. He cleared his throat. To my son, Richard, and my granddaughter, Brenda, I have already provided a gift of $5 million each on Christmas Eve. This constitutes their full and final share of my liquid assets. The room went so quiet you could hear Rick's expensive watch ticking. Wait, Rick said, his voice dropping to a low growl. What do you mean, final share? That was a Christmas gift. We're talking about the estate. The house, the investments, the trust. The house, Henderson continued, along with the primary trust, all real estate holdings, and the remaining diversified portfolio, totaling approximately $42 million in liquid assets and an additional $15 million in property, is to be left in its entirety to my granddaughter, Eleanor Edie Vance. Brenda actually stood up, her chair screeching against the floor. What? $57 million to Edie? The girl who wears thrift store sweaters and drives a 10-year-old Honda? That is straight-up cap. Nana was glitched when she wrote that. She had to be. I told you guys it was going to get wild. Can we just talk about the sheer audacity of Brenda? If you're enjoying watching these vultures lose their minds, hit that like button and subscribe right now. We're about to see just how far a greedy family will go to clutch a win they don't deserve. Share this video and tell me, if you were Edie, would you give them a single cent after this? Rick was vibrating with rage. He looked at me, and if looks could kill, I'd have been yeeted into the afterlife right then and there. You did this, didn't you? You big-brained your way into her head. You spent all those sweet afternoons with her just to gatekeep the fortune from the rest of us. I spent those afternoons with her because I loved her, Rick, I said, my voice steady even though my heart was pounding. While you were out hustling people, she was funding libraries. She saw exactly who you were. We're suing, Brenda hissed, her face contorted. This is undue influence. You manipulated a dying woman. We'll have this will tossed so fast it'll make your head spin. You think you're a main character now? Just wait until our lawyers get a hold of you. Mr. Henderson leaned back, a small, almost invisible smile touching his lips. You are certainly welcome to try, Miss Vance. However, Evelyn was quite thorough. She underwent a full psychiatric evaluation the day before signing this will, and she recorded a video statement explaining exactly why she was choosing Edie. She even mentions the trash can incident specifically as proof of your lack of character. Rick's face went from red to a ghostly, sickly white. He realized that Nana hadn't just left them behind, she had receipts. She had predicted their move and blocked it before they even thought of it. This isn't over, Rick muttered, grabbing his coat. You might have the money now, Edie, but you've lost your family. Hope those millions can keep you warm at night, because you're officially dead to us. They stormed out, leaving me alone with Mr. Henderson. I felt like I had just survived a hurricane. Are you all right, Eleanor? The lawyer asked. I'm fine, I whispered. But they're right about one thing. I don't have a family anymore. No, Henderson said, handing me a small, sealed envelope Nana had left behind. You don't have vultures anymore. There's a big difference. Now, let's talk about how you're going to change the world. If I thought the vultures were going to just slink away and lick their wounds, I was straight up delusional. Within 48 hours of the will reading, my mailbox was stuffed with cease and desist orders and formal notices of a lawsuit. Uncle Rick and Brenda hadn't just hired a lawyer, they had hired a legal hitman, the kind of guy who specializes in making people's lives a living nightmare until they settle, just to make the pain stop. They were suing for undue influence, lack of testamentary capacity, and, get this, fraudulent conversion. Basically, they were telling the world that I had brainwashed Nana in her final days to cut them out. They even went on social media to leak their side of the story. Brenda posted a 10-minute storytime video on her lifestyle brands page, crying about how her beloved Nana had been isolated and manipulated by a greedy relative. She didn't name me, but she didn't have to. The comments were flooded with people calling me a snake and a clout chaser. It was a full-blown character assassination. I was sitting in my classroom after school, staring at my phone, feeling like the world was closing in. I was just a teacher. I liked grading essays and helping kids with their multiplication tables. I wasn't built for a high-stakes legal drama. Don't let them ratio your spirit, Edie, a voice said from the doorway. It was Mr. Henderson. He walked in, looking as unbothered as ever. I saw the social media posts. Very theatrical. Rick and Brenda are trying to win in the court of public opinion because they know they can't win in a court of law. Can they actually win, though? I asked, my voice shaking. They're saying Nana wasn't in her right mind. They're saying I forced her to write those checks. Let them talk, Henderson said, pulling a flash drive from his pocket. They think they're the main characters in a movie where they're the heroes. They have no idea they're actually the NPCs in a story Nana finished writing months ago. We're going to a preliminary hearing tomorrow. I want you to be there. And I want you to wear that thrift store sweater they kept mocking. Wait, guys, did you hear that? Mr. Henderson is officially the GOAT, greatest of all time. If you're ready to see Rick and Brenda get served a reality check they'll never forget, smash that like button. Subscribe and hit the bell because the courtroom drama is about to be absolute cinema. Share this video with anyone who's ever dealt with a toxic family member. This one's for you. The next morning, the courthouse was crawling with Brenda's paparazzi, aka 2 interns with iPhones. Rick was there in a suit that probably cost more than my car, looking smug. He leaned over as I walked past him toward the defense table. "Last chance to settle, Edie," he whispered, his breath smelling like expensive coffee and desperation. "Give us 30 million, and we'll make all this go away. Otherwise, we're going to drag you through the mud until your name is dirt." "Keep your 30 million, Rick," I said, not even looking at him. "You're going to need it for your legal fees." The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Justice Sterling, called the session to order. Rick's lawyer stood up and gave a dramatic speech about familial duty and the tragic decline of a once great mind. He painted a picture of Nana as a confused old woman who didn't know what she was doing when she handed out multi-million-dollar gifts like candy. "Your Honor," Rick's lawyer shouted, "the defendant, Edie Vance, used her position as a caregiver to gatekeep the decedent's affections and assets. It is a clear case of predatory behavior." Justice Sterling looked over her glasses at Mr. Henderson. "Does the defense have a response?" "Just one, Your Honor," Henderson said calmly. "We'd like to play a piece of evidence. It's a video recorded by Edie Vance on December 23rd, one day before the Christmas Eve gathering. It was filmed at a professional medical facility during her final psychiatric evaluation. The lights dimmed, and a large screen at the front of the room flickered to life. There was Nana. She looked frail, yes, but her eyes were sharp, sharper than I'd ever seen them. "Hello, Richard." "Hello, Brenda," Nana's voice filled the courtroom. "If you're watching this, it means you've done exactly what I expected you to do. You've decided that greed is more important than my memory. You've decided to sue my Edie." She leaned closer to the camera, a small, knowing smile on her face. "I am recording this to state, under oath and in the presence of 3 board-certified doctors, that I am of sound mind. I am cutting you out not because I am glitched, but because you are. I watched you throw my fake checks in the trash. I heard you call me incompetent. And I want the court to know that every cent I've left to Edie is a reward for the only thing you couldn't buy, genuine love." She paused, then added one final mic drop. "And Rick? If you're still trying to settle for 30 million. I've instructed my executors that for every day this lawsuit continues, $1 million will be deducted from your Christmas Eve gift and donated to the Edie Vance Scholarship Fund. So, the longer you fight, the broker you get. Choose wisely." The courtroom went dead silent. Rick looked like he'd just been one-shot in a video game. He turned to his lawyer, but the guy was already packing up his briefcase. The siege wasn't just over, it was a total wipeout. The silence in that courtroom after Nana's video ended was the loudest thing I've ever heard. It was the sound of Uncle Rick's empire crumbling and Brenda's influencer dreams hitting a brick wall. They didn't even wait for the judge to formally dismiss the case. Rick practically sprinted out of the room, his face a shade of purple that definitely wasn't on brand. Brenda followed, crying real tears for once, though I suspect they were for the millions she just watched evaporate. Justice Sterling didn't just dismiss the suit, she ordered Rick and Brenda to pay my legal fees for bringing a frivolous and bad faith action. It was a total W for the home team. But as I walked out of the courthouse, I didn't feel like celebrating. I felt hollow. I had $57 million in the bank, but I had lost the only people who shared my DNA. Even if they were vultures, they were the only family I had left. Or so I thought. "You look like you just lost a fortune instead of winning one," Mr. Henderson said, catching up to me on the courthouse steps. It's a lot, Henderson," I said, pulling my sweater tighter. "What do I do now? Go back to teaching 3rd grade like nothing happened? My name is all over the news. I'm the librarian heiress. I can't exactly go back to grading spelling tests without it being weird. Nana knew that too, Henderson said, handing me a heavy brass key. She bought a property a few years ago. She never lived there. She called it her insurance policy for peace. It's in a small coastal town about 4 hours north. No one knows who you are there. And there's something else, something she wanted you to see in person. Hold up, a secret coastal getaway? Nana really thought of everything. If you're loving this transition from courtroom drama to a fresh start vibe, show some love. Hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs a reminder that sometimes you have to leave your old life behind to find your real purpose. What would you do first if you inherited a secret beach house? Let me know in the comments. I took the key. I went back to my apartment, packed my life into a few boxes, and resigned from my teaching position. It was bittersweet saying goodbye to my students, but I knew I could do more for them now as a silent benefactor than I ever could as a frustrated teacher fighting for a budget. The drive north was beautiful. As the city skyline faded into rolling hills and eventually the salty mist of the Pacific, I felt the weight on my chest start to lift. I arrived in a town called Haven Creek. It was the kind of place that felt low-key and timeless, lots of bookstores, local coffee shops, and people who didn't care about your portfolio. The insurance policy for peace turned out to be a stunning, weathered cottage sitting on a cliff overlooking the ocean. It was modest but perfect. But when I walked inside, I realized it wasn't just a house. The living room was filled with filing cabinets and architectural blueprints. On the wall was a giant map of the county, dotted with red and blue pins. There was a note on the desk in Nana's handwriting. Edie, if you're reading this, you've survived the vultures. Welcome to the headquarters. This isn't just a house, it's the nerve center for the Vance Foundation. The red pins are schools that need libraries. The blue pins are community centers that need funding. I started the work, but I'm passing the torch to you. Don't just spend the money, Edie. Change the meta. Build something that outlives us both. I sat down at the desk, running my fingers over the blueprints. One was for a massive scholarship fund, and another was for a specialized school for kids with learning disabilities, something I'd dreamed of opening for years but never had the capital to even consider. But then, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. You think you're safe up there? We found the house, Edie. You can't ghost your own blood. We're coming for what's ours, and this time, we aren't bringing lawyers. We're bringing the truth to the press. See you soon, cousin. It was Brenda. They weren't done. They were down bad, and desperate people are the most dangerous. They were going to try to dox my new life before it even started. I looked at the brass key in my hand and then at the blueprints. I had the resources, I had the location, and I had Nana's legacy. I wasn't the broke teacher anymore. I was the guardian. And if they wanted to bring the fight to Haven Creek, they were about to find out that I'd learned a few pro-gamer moves from the best to ever do it. I didn't have to wait long for the vultures to make their move. 2 days after Brenda's ominous text, a black SUV, way too flashy for a town where most people drive rusted-out Subarus, pulled onto the gravel driveway of my cottage. Out stepped Brenda, looking like she was ready for a Coachella photo shoot, and Uncle Rick, who was busy adjusted his silk tie as if he were about to enter a boardroom instead of a coastal hideaway. They didn't come alone. They had a journalist with them, actually, a guy with a gimbal and a ring light from one of those clickbait gossip sites that specializes in canceling people. They were trying to dox my piece in real time, hoping to catch me looking guilty in my new mansion. Edie. Sweetie. Brenda shouted, her voice echoing off the cliffs. We just wanted to check in. Make sure you weren't feeling too lonely in our Nana's house. The cameraman was already filming, circling the property like a shark. Is it true, Miss Vance? Is it true you finessed $60 million away from your grieving relatives while they were at their lowest? I stood on the porch, leaning against the railing. I didn't look like a millionaire. I was wearing leggings, an oversized hoodie, and I had a paintbrush in my hand. I wasn't going to give them the villain aesthetic they were looking for. "You're trespassing, Rick," I said, my voice calm. "And Brenda? Your engagement must be really down bad if you've resorted to stalking your own cousin for content." "We aren't stalking, we're investigating," Brenda snapped, her fake smile slipping. "The public deserves to know that you're gatekeeping a fortune that belongs to the whole family. We're here for a peace summit. Give us a seat at the table, or we'll make sure this town knows exactly who just moved into their neighborhood." Wait, did they really bring a gossip reporter to a private house? If you think Brenda and Rick have officially lost their minds, drop a shame in the comments. And seriously, hit that subscribe button. The way Edie handles this clout chase is absolute genius. Share this video with anyone who's ever had to deal with someone performing for the camera. "You want a seat at the table?" I asked, stepping down the porch stairs. "Fine. Let's talk about the table. Let's talk about the fact that while you were driving up here, I was on the phone with the Haven Creek Town Council. You see, this cottage isn't just a house. It's the registered office for a nonprofit that just bought the town's failing community center." Rick's eyes narrowed. "What does that have to do with us?" "Everything," I said, pointing to a local sheriff's cruiser that was slowly pulling into the driveway behind their SUV. "In Haven Creek, we look out for our own. And the people here don't like out-of-towners harassing their neighbors, especially neighbors who just funded the new youth soccer program." The sheriff, a man who looked like he'd been carved out of granite, stepped out of his car. "Is there a problem here, Ms. Vance?" "Just some visitors who forgot they were on private property, Sheriff," I said. Rick tried to use his high-level charm. "Officer, you don't understand. We're family. We're just here to discuss a private inheritance matter." "Does it look like a private matter to you, Sheriff?" I interrupted, pointing at the guy with the ring light. "They brought a paparazzo to my front door to ratio me on the internet." The sheriff looked at the cameraman, then at Brenda's designer, heels sinking into the mud. "This is a quiet town. We don't do paparazzi. We do trespassing tickets and disorderly conduct citations. Pack it up. Now." Brenda looked like she was about to have a literal meltdown. "You can't do this. I have a platform. I'll expose this whole town." "Go ahead," I said, walking back toward my porch. "But while you're doing that, remember what Nana said in her video. For every day you harass me, $1 million disappears from your Christmas gift. You've been here 20 minutes, Rick. That's a lot of coin to lose for a mid-TikTok dance." Rick's face went pale. He grabbed Brenda by the arm. "We're leaving. We're leaving right now." As they scrambled back into their SUV, the cameraman tripped over a driftwood log, sending his ring light flying into a bush. It was the most satisfying thing I'd ever seen. But as the SUV sped away, I knew this was just the opening act of their desperation. They were running out of money, and when people like Rick and Brenda lose their status, they stop playing by the rules. I looked at the sheriff and thanked him, but I knew I needed to do more than just call the police. I needed to secure the perimeter, not just for my house, but for Nana's legacy. I went back inside and opened the headquarters filing cabinet. It was time to stop being the quiet teacher and start being the CEO Nana knew I could be. I pulled out a file labeled the Vulture Protocol. Nana hadn't just predicted their lawsuit, she had predicted their harassment. And she had left me a cheat code that would end their games forever. The SUV's taillights were barely out of sight before I was back at the desk. I wasn't scared anymore, I was focused. Nana's Vulture Protocol wasn't a set of legal threats or more videos. It was a financial kill switch. Nana had been the primary shareholder in Rick's portfolio company and the secret angel investor behind Brenda's luxury brand for years. They thought they were self-made, but they were actually living on Nana's life support. I picked up the phone and called Mr. Henderson. Activate it, I said. The full protocol. Total divestment. Now. Within an hour, Rick's deals started falling through because his primary backer, the Vance Trust, had officially pulled out. Brenda's brand received a notice that their office space, which Nana owned through a shell company, was being repurposed as a community shelter. I didn't take their money, I just stopped paying their bills. I gave them exactly what they had asked for, a life where they didn't have to deal with a delusional old lady, or her teacher granddaughter. By sunset, my phone was blowing up. Not with threats, but with pleas. Edie, I'm sorry. I was just stressed. Please, the bank is calling my loan. Rick texted. Cousin. Let's collab. I'll delete the video. We're family, remember? Brenda begged. I didn't reply. I blocked their numbers. I wasn't being salty, I was being final. This is it, the moment of total justice. Rick and Brenda chose the bag over the person, and in the end, they lost both. If you think Edie did the right thing by cutting them off completely, hit that like button and subscribe. Your support means everything to the channel. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that kindness is a superpower, not a weakness. Thank you for being part of this journey. I walked out onto the porch of the cottage. The air was cool, and the sound of the waves felt like a clean slate. I had millions in the bank, but more importantly, I had a purpose. The next morning, I walked down to the Haven Creek Library. I didn't go in as an heiress or a CEO. I went in as a volunteer. As I sat down to read a story to a group of local kids, I felt Nana's presence beside me. The silent legacy wasn't about the millions. It was about the stories we leave behind and the lives we touch when no one is watching. My greedy family walked away from a fortune, but I walked toward a future. And honestly, it's the best flex I've ever had.